before we actually start the show, I'm going to give a live J&B whiskey review. Here we go. Oh, God. Oh, it's so strong. Oh. Not bad, though.
Sting the nostrils?
No, not actually. You know what? It's pretty smooth for scotch that I've had.
RJ McCready approved.
Absolutely. And Dario Argento is driving to my house right now. All right, we're going back to the soon thing. You're listening to Second Cut. This is the podcast from the filmmagazine.com where we talk about topics in film theory, criticism, and history because it's fun to do. I'm Jacob, and I'm the one who also cannot catch a cab to save his life.
I'm Sam. I'm the one who takes his time getting ready for every single kill, including very heavy black eyeliner.
I'm Kieran. I'm the one who also most of the time can't remember really, really important details and things that probably should be incredibly useful, and therefore takes ages to do anything.
There was another good one in Deep Red that I didn't use because I didn't do Deep Red, and I didn't want to take it from somebody. But now I've forgotten what it is, so this is just a pointless anecdote. But I guess it goes along those lines.
Yeah, welcome to Giallos, where people can't remember something very important quite often, because otherwise the film will be over in about 20 minutes.
Yeah, but I mean, also, that's how our brains work. We misremember lots of stuff.
Who said that?
Exactly. I think Abraham Lincoln said that.
Okay, that makes sense.
He said rely on Google because your memory is bad.
Yep.
Yeah, so we are talking about, I mean, you see the title, Dario Argento. I put the best of because, I mean, this is the best of. Let's be real.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't decide to go for the Card Player or Dark Glasses or Giallo, which the last two I've heard are awful. Yeah. The Card Player is an attempt, but not great.
I think in terms of what's actually his best, it's there can be a lot of debate can be had, but it's generally between these three, and for good reason, I think.
Yeah, I think sometimes something like and then you get like a second tier of like Four Flies on Grey Velvet, Tenebrae, Terror at the Opera. I will defend Phenomena for two things. One being Donald Pleasance, two being the soundtrack, which contains both Motorhead and Iron Maiden, and that's about it. And Inferno isn't bad either. And then you kind of get a Cat 9, and then you kind of get a third tier of stuff like Card Player and stuff like that. And Mother of Tears apparently isn't great.
I've unluckily put myself through Mother of Tears because I've really enjoyed the first two of the of the trilogy. I thought, oh, how bad it could be? At least be interesting. It's like it's so boring, so boring.
I mean, the fact it's like part of an unofficial trilogy that came out 27 years after the previous installment should probably tell you a lot.
He's really got a lot in common with Francis Ford Coppola, doesn't he? Not just using Vittorio Storaro, but just putting your daughter into movies, really falling off after the 80s.
I mean, I will say that from my vague memory of the Card Player, Asia Argento in that is much better than Sofia Coppola in Godfather Part 3.
Well, she's been in more movies, to be fair. She wasn't just shoved in.
Yeah. At the last minute because all the other actresses weren't available, yeah.
Yeah. And then he also wrote Once Upon a Time in the West.
Or co-wrote it, at least.
Yeah.
And then he did a load of stuff, and then eventually would go on to... Did he co-write or supervise Dawn of the Dead? I think in some way.
This says he produced and also edited the European cut and contributed to the soundtrack.
Yeah, because it was that, and he got help with from Zombie as well. Sorry, Goblin. Sorry, I'm now looking at Dawn of the Dead. got help from Goblin as well, as far as I can remember, for helping the soundtrack, which explains a lot.
He also apparently edited the European cut of Martin from Romero. So
yeah, and I think it's quite funny that he obviously helped Dawn of the Dead, and then what would be a Zombie 2 in Italy was Zombie Flesh Eaters by Lucio Fulci, and at that time they were kind of bitter rivals because Fulci was very much as like, why does everyone praise Argento when I'm doing exactly the same thing and everyone hates my stuff? And he was very much bitter by that. And thankfully in the 90s they did put their kind of past behind them to make one film when Fulci was very ill. But
apparently there was some discussion with going back to Romero and their kind of partnership. There was some discussion about him remaking Deep Red in the early 2000s, and it never quite got. It was considered, and he was sort of expressing interest, and he was told by the producer once it's happened that, oh yeah, Argento will be well up for this. And then he rang him up and said, so what do you think about this project? And Argento basically said, I don't know anything about this. No one's talked to me. I don't like the idea. He was like, okay, I won't do it. Sorry, I asked.
Yeah, I mean, and if you're mates and you go, look, is this a thing? And he goes, I have no idea about this and I think it's a bad idea, then Romero not going through with it is obviously like, yeah, fair enough, mate, sorry.
well, we've kind of dipped our toes into it, but you guys have watched the documentary. Tell us a little bit about Dario Argento, the man.
Yeah, Sam can do this because, as I was speaking beforehand, I did see it at the beginning of the year, and the trouble is that was at the beginning of the year. So I remember liking it very much, but details specifically have kind of vanished.
Well, Kieran, so interject with fun anecdotes.
Vaguely related. Okay, go, Sam.
I mean, it's a pretty standard kind of route in the film industry for a kind of filmmaker. You know, he starts off as a critic,
nepo baby.
Well, yeah, and as an nepo baby, yeah. I mean, yeah, son of a big Italian producer, but yeah, starts off like Truffaut and Godard as a critic, and writing movie reviews for.
So there's hope for us, yeah.
And then kind of fell into the actual production and then directing side of things. I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously he's had a massive kind of influence in a lot of especially horror directors since. I mean, this documentary kind of focused on the main talking heads were Guillermo del Toro, Nicholas Winding Refn, and Gaspar Noé. So that they're all basically absolutely indebted to his kind of style, especially in terms of kind of how their kind of films kind of look and feel.
And they all make such different films, so that's pretty crazy.
Well, I mean, Del Toro, one of his early short films, he did pretty much with no budget, almost like him in his bedroom kind of thing, was a movie called is it Geometria, something like that, geometry in Spanish, about a kid who it's literally about a kid who summons up a demon in his bedroom to help with his geometry homework. But because he needs help with his geometry homework, hasn't worked out that actually the pentagram is incorrect slightly, and so loses his soul. But Del Toro has been on record saying that one of the reasons for making that was to play around with funky kind of Argento-style lighting, with the reds and the blues, obviously, of Suspiria. And I will admit that when I was doing my third-year film, we had a slightly hallucinatory corridor thing, and I did throw in some red and blue lighting as well, a bit of a Suspiria tribute. It was one of the better shots of the film, probably because it was one of the only ones in focus, but that's besides the point. So yeah, Del Toro is very much influenced by him, and I think kind of if you're in horror, everybody is to a certain point, even if it's just like a little nod here and there.
Yeah, and he's obviously mostly associated with that genre. I mean, he tried to break away from it a couple of times, but they were never as successful as his kind of horror or kind of mystery kind of films, really. So, I mean, Del Toro in that documentary, he talks about kind of his kind of influence on the genre and kind of why it was important. I think he says. He picked up a lot of the strands of where Mario Bava was heading, but he had a more frenetic and more heretic feel. Everything in Argento's movies is trying to kill you, which I think is a nice Getting
Yeah,
description
I will
of
definitely
most of
agree
this
with that one.
stuff. And one of the other talking heads was Nicholas Winding Refn, and I think Suspiria, I think he said is his favourite film, but the main thing he picks out is he sees it as the ultimate cocaine movie.
Yeah.
He tells the story of at one point his dealer ran out of cocaine and he just stopped the movie. That's what I remember,
It explains a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's because it's such an abstract concept that you need to be on hard drugs basically to fully be in the right headspace for it. So,
I mean, yeah,
yeah,
we'll get to Suspiria later in more
yeah,
detail.
yeah. I mean, essentially, he did his three kind of his Animals trilogy, you know. So, so obviously starting with Bird with Crystal Plumage,
Four Flies on Grey
Cat
Velvet, and Cat Nine Tails. Yeah,
Cat Nine Tails. Yeah. So I've seen two of them. I've not seen Flies on Grey Velvet yet, but
I
Cat
watched. I had
interesting.
started to try and watch Four Flies many times, and for whatever reason, just kind of, didn't actually get round to finishing it. I watched it just before, because I'm looking at my film list. I watched it not that long ago, just before we did our 2004 episode, because it's right next to on my list, House of Flying Daggers and The Aviator. So what, a month and a half ago, something like that? Aside from the introduction, which I've now seen several times, obviously trying to watch it several times, I couldn't tell you what happens. That's the thing. Like, I don't know if it's just my memory or there's a certain amount of giallo films that blur into one, that you remember abstract moments, but most of it's kind of similar.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Deep Red for this, obviously we'll get into it more, but and obviously there are vivid images I remember from Suspiria and from Bird of Crystal Plumage. It's these kind of searing kind of visuals that you do remember. You know, but you don't quite, you remember the general gist of kind of what happens and kind of the big moments and everything, but not necessarily the intricate kind of this to this to this of the potting. It's more. I mean, notice this again rewatching. Does it go for giallo in general? It's not like the neatest plotting in the world. It's generally, it's like stuff happens one after another. You could sort of just don't overanalyze it. You know, just accept. Yeah, this would probably flow into this, and yeah, that you might extrapolate this from this, but it's not like strict like one-to-one kind of thing. That's not really what it's about. It's about those those really memorable kind of moments. Kind of. Stylish violence, the lighting, these memorable deaths and stuff like that. It's a bit different.
I mean, we should. I think we've briefly gone over giallo before. We should probably do a very quick recap, because that's the main genre in. Suspiria is kind of like a half giallo. Like it's got most of the iconography of a giallo, but
fantastical
it's
giallo.
Yeah, kind of thing.
A cult giallo, yeah.
Whatever that is. Argento obviously.
Although Deep Red kind of is too, so like it's.
Yeah, kind of,
yeah, somewhere around there. So giallo started off not in film. It started out in books and publishing. So in the 40s and 50s and 60s, around there, Italian kind of mass paperbacks they were publishing. I'm not sure if it was a specific publisher or just the general trend. So you had both original kind of violent thriller shocker books and publications, and also reprints of other authors, so like Agatha Christie and my copy here of Edgar Wallace, an Italian copy, Classico, I Classici del Giallo, something like that. I can't speak Italian, can you tell? A copy of so it's Edgar Wallace's The Man Who Bought London from 1915, so it's reprints. So pretty much anyone would get brought into that, and to market it, they put it in a yellow copy to help it stand up on the racks. Hence, giallo is yellow in Italian. So when it eventually gets into film,
that's where giallo, the term for yellow, came from. Interesting.
Yeah. Did you not know this? Like, I'm fairly sure you did.
Never mind.
I can't detect sarcasm, it seems. So yeah, when you get to kind of the 60s, people are kind of experimenting with before, but realistically, when most people go, what was the first proper giallo? Most people will cite Mario Bava's Blood and Black Lace from 1964, and there you get the kind of the mask killer, the black gloves, the kind of extreme violence thriller, and
The
then
Pretty
it kind
Lights.
of Pretty Lights. And then again, Bava is continuing to do this. People like Sergio Martino get
But
into it later
real
on.
quick, one thing I saw thrown in this time reading about it was The Girl Who Knew Too Much, which I haven't seen. But
I've heard of, yes.
yeah, I also always thought it was his Blood and Black Lace, but now I'm gonna have to watch The Girl Who Knew Too Much.
Yeah, I think it's one of those ones a bit like if somebody goes, where does the blockbuster start? Everyone says Jaws, even though there's going to be ones beforehand. If in doubt, we go Jaws, and we go, you might technically be wrong, but it's not the worst answer in the world, kind of thing, you know. And so
Either way, it's Bava. So
yeah, and so people kind of get in on it, sort of going up the late 60s, early 70s. And then when you start to get to the kind of early 70s with Argento, and I remember this from a talk I attended with Luigi Cozzi, who would help Argento on a couple of films, and later went on. I think his most well-known film is Star Crash, which is an Italian rip-off of Star Wars, which is quite fun but not great. It's one of these like kind of camp cult classics now.
they're
Got
wearing
Carolyn Munro in it.
sandals and carrying swords.
Kind of with like really dodgy. It's like an Italian Roger Corman kind of thing, or at least done by Luigi Cozzi, who was a best mate. And he was essentially saying that when you start to get to the 70s, where the giallo really hits its height and everything kind of solidifies, the trouble was everyone just and the trouble was that because it was like not just a horror, it was like a violent murder mystery normally, and a thriller. Everyone essentially in the writing department started trying to outdo each other. And kind of that was the point. The more ludicrous and intricate like the plot line was getting, the better you were doing in a way. It was almost like trying to outpuzzle each other. So by the time you get to like 74, 75, 76, a lot of them really don't make sense. Or are just ludicrous in their plot lines, essentially because they're trying to find a new way to outdo what came out the year before in terms of plot. And so everything just starts dissolving on each other by the sort of the end of the 70s going into the 80s. And it's quite interesting. You do find rare instances because obviously the slasher film in America, you've got prototypes in kind of the 60s and 70s, but most people will say that Halloween and Prom Night and then Friday the 13th and stuff like that at the end of 70s, early 80s kind of kicked it off. They were obviously very much influenced by kind of the giallo and the way you set up of violent murders over the time. And then there's a really interesting artifact. Well, there's actually two that I want to pick up on. One is a film called Stage Fright in 1987, which is an Italian slasher film, like mass slasher. So it's like it's gone from Italy to America and then back to Italy again. And then there was a film called, if you haven't seen it, it's called Abracadabra, and I think it's from Argentina. I will double check. It came out
Uri
about
Geller has sued that.
it. It came out about 6-7 years ago, but it is a full giallo tribute. It's like 70 minutes long. Like the crackling is there in the film grain. The kind of there's one or two kind of drone shots that they obviously wouldn't have got, but for the most part, the zooms are the same, the shots are the same. There's very slightly bad dubbing in parts as well.
Yeah,
It's a full-on tribute.
I mean, we've mentioned it before, haven't we? But Edgar Wright's Last Night in Soho. That's very much like a love letter to
Yeah.
giallo, at least visually. Obviously, it doesn't go the full hog. In terms of like aping like the kind of the production style or anything like that. It's very much like in his style, but borrowing like the lighting and the camera moves and stuff like that. It's
Yeah.
And
I mean,
I
bringing
think
it very
the very succinct way to describe it is like a mixture between slashers and noir. Like it, whenever you said murder mysteries, like it's very much that more than just people getting stabbed and then running around screaming.
It's a kind of detective thriller, but whenever somebody gets offed, they get offed with lashings of blood kind of thing. And so there's the usual kind of iconography of the black gloves that comes from a very Mario Bava thing, and it gets carried on. I think at least 2 of our 3 films have like the black gloves in it. I think both Crystal Plumage and Fonda Rosso does.
I think Suspiria does at the beginning, but just once.
Possibly, yeah. Most of them have it. then there's obviously the bottles of J&B. And that came about essentially because J&B, well, it's product placement, but whereas a lot of product placement is like we're going to try and get in the best films possible, so things like Rolex, I think, for James Bond, where even on the poster, when you're on like the posters, I think I remember for No Time to Die, because when I was working at a cinema, that was the poster that was up. The Rolex is clearly on display, and that is an obvious thing. And they actually had to go back and reshoot stuff because they'd filmed a lot of it pre-COVID with the Rolex that was then coming out, and then it came out 2 years later, so they had to go back and reshoot stuff because the Rolex was now out of limit. But J&B essentially went, we don't care as long as it's in a film. So all of the low budget, trashy, like 70s horror films have a bottle of J&B in there.
I must admit, I never picked up on the J&B thing particularly. It's quite interesting.
I think the most famous shot of it is McCready's drinking it at the start of the thing. But now if you watch any kind of 70s, especially giallo is what it's identified with, but even some like 80s slasher flicks as well. And a film we did very much back in the day, me and Jacob did before Sam came on, we did Hot Tension, Switchblade Romance, where one of the characters goes and buys a bottle specifically of yellow label J&B very early on. And this is like 30 years after the heyday of it, but now it's kind of a well-known thing. I think there is actually online somewhere like a website or a list that shows you all the films that J&B has been in, and it's a long and extensive list, and you can find things. Let me see if I can find it now as we
I only noticed it in Crystal Plumage. I don't think it's in the other two, but it has a very prominent scene in Bird with the Crystal Plumage.
Yeah, it's that kind of thing.
A couple other things real quick on Argento that we didn't mention. Still making movies. He made one in 2022. Also starred in Vortex from Gaspar Noé. So...
Yeah, I mean that was one of the things about that documentary. Actually, it was made while he was finishing his latest film at the time, which I presume would have been Dark Glasses. Because apparently that's what he does. To finish off his scripts, he locks himself away in a hotel for a couple of weeks, on his own, and just hits it hard.
There is just very quickly. There is a website called J&B in the Movies that is literally just people like putting in new places they've spotted J&B.
Awesome.
And in categories, action crime has 180 entries. Erotica, sleaze, cannibals has 42 entries. But giallo has its own thing with 51 entries. Weapon the motive. Just looking through. Crazy Desires of a Murderer, The Murder Mansion, Abracadabra. As I mentioned before.
I would imagine Tarantino's probably used it as a reference at some point.
More than likely. Especially as well, considering the trailers, or at least one of the trailers for Kill Bill, some of the music was from Seven Notes in Black, or The Psychic, which is a Fulci film from '77, and it's not only the theme tune in that, but a key component in the actual film itself. He obviously knows almost all these films like the back of his hand, so very possibly. Then we look up and see if he's done it.
Well, let's actually just jump into The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, Kieran, which you were very adamant about picking. Why is that?
I picked it because, and unfortunately I can't really talk about it, but it has possibly my favorite plot twist of all time.
We're gonna have to talk about it. Spoilers for all of these.
We're gonna talk about it.
Okay, the movie came out in 1970.
If you haven't seen it by now,
tough. It has it. I mean, actually, watching it back again, it's shot in a way that reduces the power of it that I therefore don't like. But when I watched it the first time and the kind of reveal came up, I'm just like, that's a moment of pure genius. Unfortunately, watching it back the way it's shot, I don't appreciate it, because you can't actually guess it from the footage that you have in the film, which is one of my prerequisites for.
So I'll come to it, but that's why I love Deep Red so much.
I don't have a problem with that, because like the guy outside doesn't know any more than we do. Like, I don't think there should be a clue. It's just like his assumption is pretty logical. I don't know why you would look at that and think anything other than what he thinks.
My trouble is that many years ago I wrote an article for the film magazine on plot twists in films and how they should be done properly. And I said in there that my favorite plot twist of all time was in The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. And every time I come to it, it's The Bird with the Crystal Plumage. When somebody goes, "What's your favorite plot twist?" It's always this one. Unfortunately, one of my prerequisites for having a good plot twist, either in any form, so video game, film, book, whatever, is that you must have all of the information. And it's essentially a revealing of, you didn't pick up on it and you go, oh, it's so obvious. Because otherwise, you essentially have not a somehow Palpatine returned, but it's a, we got you, and you go, well, there's no way we could have known that.
It's like if the killer was unmasked and it's someone we've never seen before. It's a revelation to the audience, but it doesn't mean anything, and we wouldn't have been able to.
Either that, or the plot twist is like, oh my god. In the nicest way, I'm gonna pull up Star Wars, the "I am your father" bit. It's an amazing kind of revelation.
Yeah.
But it's not necessarily I don't like it because there is no way you could have known that beforehand. So when it's a plot twist, I go, it's just giving you new information that is shocking rather than changing everything you knew beforehand.
I'll give you this, Kieran. The information is there. We just have certain, cultural assumptions that cause us to say, oh, this is what is happening in that scene. And it's overall impressionistic because we're like literally in that character's POV. We're watching his weird memories of it. Like, I'm not sure how you could more put in the information than just showing the scene.
Yeah. Okay. Very, very quickly to stop us talking in innuendo and subterfuge. Essentially, the main character, the whole thing is started off by him witnessing a woman getting attacked from outside of a gallery, and they're inside. And then the killer attacker runs off. The twist is it's actually the other way around, and she was attacking him, and the knife was in the other hand. The thing I don't like about it is that the footage, I say footage, the video, whatever you want to say, that we get shown in the initial attack scene from what he sees is very slightly different to when he works it out and has a flashback to, oh my god, now I realize what it was. That's what I have the issue with. It's because the footage is different.
And they do, and that is kind of cheating, isn't it? It's sort of cheating the audience a little bit. It's kind of it's playing with the form.
It doesn't change the genius of the idea. And the impact of it the first time, I still remember watching it going, that's absolute genius. And it still is a very good idea. But I think it should have been edited very slightly differently, even if it's out.
And it is. I'll give it. It is one of my favorite opening scenes in a film like this.
It's really well done.
Great, really brightly lit. Kind of in full view of the kind of brutality, and for the character to be stuck in that kind of airlock, essentially.
I was going to say
completely helpless. It's a clever idea.
Yeah, the editing of the footage and that. In order for you to be able to have all the information technically beforehand. Again, you only get it on going back and watching it again, and that's a very slight gripe. Everything else is so good. The way it's shot, the way the main character's kind of framed in the glass, and you've got the one shot of him inside between these two sets of glass doors, and kind of the woman on the floor reaching out with the bloodied hand. Really nicely done.
I'll still defend that we're getting, his brain trick POV. That's the whole movie is like, what does he think is going on here? We see all of his non-specific memories. Like, if that was not a part of the plot specifically, I would probably have more of a problem. But like, misinterpretation, misseeing, misremembering.
I was gonna say it only takes it down from like a 10 to like an 8.
Oh yeah.
It's not like the entire movie is now ruined for me. It's just that my thing is now like, oh damn, I can't quite put it in the category of what I was doing at the Holy Grail, because now I've rewatched and gone, it doesn't quite line up with my personal way I kind of define kind of plot twists and revelations, stuff like that. Aside from that, the rest of the film is really nicely done, and for a directorial debut as well, it really is a nice kind of setup of what would later come. I mean, it's not the biggest budget film in the world, so you're always going to have some stuff in the editing which now looks very slight. It looks a little bit dated. Let's be fair. The way that and also if you get obviously like the American version, the dubbing's going to be not great because that's how Italians work.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing I will say to anyone who's kind of thinking of getting into giallo and Argento films in particular, and they're not familiar with that aspect of it. It can take some getting used to. It's like you will get there if you watch a few, but it's jarring at first. So even if you watch the Italian version of it, they're speaking Italian, but it's dubbed afterwards, so it's not quite kind of
Well, if you've seen the Man with No Name trilogy, like it's the same thing there. Like that's just Italian technology access.
I think it was. I don't know exactly why they did it. I think it's so that they could have some American or English names and money in there.
I think it made it much easier to sell it to foreign territories and do like another kind of soundtrack essentially.
I still don't understand the logic of it because again we've mentioned this before.
You don't have to buy audio equipment.
They'll take half Italian cast and half American cast and have them both speak their own language and then dub over half the film each. So why I was struggling
with is Argento tends to have at least one kind of major English speaking, actor. As sometimes as leads, as English actors, as American actors. He didn't speak any English at the time. How was he directing them? I don't understand.
I mean, he'll obviously will have been on set for stuff like Once Upon a Time in the West. So I'm guessing there's going to be some stuff going in there and through the Leone things, but I've no idea. I don't know how you would do that.
He just Italianed at them and they figured it out.
I mean, we'll probably find out with Bong Joon-ho because obviously he did Snowpiercer and now he's just done Mickey 17 as well. So we'll probably find out that way. Damn them for shoving Mickey 17 in January as a release date, which is the dead zone. But that's beside the point.
Kieran, what do you think of Tony Musante, who, looking at him, I would not have guessed as an American actor. I would have thought he was an Italian playing an American.
Tony Musante is...
He's the main guy, the author.
He's not American?
No, he is.
Oh, okay. He's American playing the American author. He's not bad actually. Strangely enough, I actually think his hair is the most memorable part of him. But that's like the point. Like I'm watching it again and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember this guy because I remember his haircut. Like it's one of those things where if you put it in front of me, it's like I remember him because of the hair. He's not bad. And again, to be directed by somebody who doesn't speak his language, in a country that's obviously I don't know how much Italian he speaks. Maybe he spoke fluent Italian as well. In which case that would make it slightly easier. But he's actually...
I guess we didn't consider they could speak Italian.
Yes, and apparently he's also been in a number of Italian productions, including The Mercenary, Metti una sera a cena, and The Bird of Crystal Plumage. So there you
go. Yeah, but like Barbara Steele was in a load of Italian movies, and she never learned to speak Italian.
So was Donald Pleasance, actually.
I mean, I think we're presuming that if they're American or English, then they wouldn't have bothered.
I mean, most of the time it's a decent thing to presume, but that's besides the point.
Maybe they met in the middle and spoke German.
Yeah.
Apparently, he was born to an Italian-American family, so...
Oh, right, yeah.
I mean, that normally doesn't assume anything, but...
Yeah, there's possibly a slightly high chance with him, yeah. But no, I think everyone was just speaking louder and slower in their own language, hoping something would break through.
Yeah. I mean,
well,
there's I think when the acting isn't amazing, but it's, for the most part, it's decent.
I think we gave the plot twist, but Kieran, what is the actual plot of the movie?
So an American writer witnesses an attack on a woman, and then he starts getting attacked, and they think it's related to a series of murders that have been going on throughout the city. I'm guessing is Rome, throughout the month. And so he's now coming under attack, and so he's trying to figure out what happened, and he's getting tapes from the killer and stuff like that, and various bits and pieces. And from the recordings of the conversation or phone calls, they eventually work out that the killer was calling from essentially
Inside the
next to
house.
the. Yeah.
He's
Sorry, you're
inside
about
the house.
You're 7 years too early for that, mate. Well, for the main film, the short came out in 77, so 7 years too early. But yeah, it turns out that he was calling via an open window right next to a zoo, which has the titular bird of the crystal plumage, the only one in the entirety of Italy. What the absolute chances of that? Good job for them. Good job it wasn't like a pigeon they caught in the background, or any other zoo animals.
I thought you were going to say the only one of Argento's animal trilogy to actually feature the animal in the title.
There's that as well.
I mean, you mentioned the conversation, like something that really struck me this time is like the focus on technology and like advanced police procedure. Where they're trying to go, oh, look how modern the police are, and they're looking at oscillating voice waves on machines, and it's very quaint.
I mean, this came out in 1970, so it would have been actually fairly advanced for the time.
Oh, sure, yeah. I'm not
looking back on it 54 years later and going, wow.
I'm not saying it wasn't. I'm saying I have a phone.
But don't they reference like kind of what the FBI are doing and stuff? And it's like this is the very latest in crime-stopping technology, and it speaks to the Americans. And it's a bit like Bong Joon-ho's Memories of Murder, which is set probably only a few years after this. It's sort of like late 70s, and they reference kind of like DNA evidence coming in at the same for the first time. Just how it's going to change the game rather than just fabricating your evidence and just forcing the clues to fit whether they do or not. Then you actually you've actually got something concrete to work off now.
No, yeah. So they go there and they find the killer, who falls to his death out the window, and then it eventually turns out that they weren't the killer, or were, and it was actually the wife, who again was being attacked, and actually was the attacker, and tries to kill the main character, but gets stopped, and hooray, we saved the day.
Well, did we mention that at the beginning he's wearing the giallo killer outfit? So like, that's really on him. He should have been wearing a black trench coat and a black hat.
I was going to say, giallos have been going for about 7-8 years now. He really should have known better at this point. Yeah. And shouldn't have started everything off by kind of lining up his knives with his leather gloves. This is being zipped up. I mean, that's the giveaway. I mean, I do think the switch there is very nice, because they set it up as well as they can do, with kind of having kind of the black gloves, and everything suggests a male, and then it turns out to be a female killer. Argento likes having evil women in his movies. Not all the time, but fairly often.
And he likes faking us out, by presuming that it's a man they're looking for. Yeah.
I think Blood and Black Lace does that as well, where it's a man and woman who are responsible for killings rather than just a male. So maybe it's just a giallo thing that the Italians think all women are psychopaths, or witches. Who knows?
Or they don't think that, which is what makes it such a good twist.
Ooh. Either way, it's not great on the women here. No, I mean, this is kind of it's quite good. Going off the top of my head, the reaction to Birds of Crystal Plumage was like, even in Italy, they were just like, Argento is the next great Italian director, and literally from the word go, they're like, it's so stylized, it's beautiful to look at, it's shocking, it's effective. I think even when Suspiria came out in 77, Gene Siskel would go, it's not as good as Bird of the Crystal Plumage. He probably changed his mind later on, but even Siskel was very highly complimentary of this one. And after, I'm not sure if it was straight after this or after the next one or two, he eventually gets dubbed the Italian Hitchcock.
And Hitchcock famously, after he'd seen the first couple of Argento's films, he said in an interview, "The Italian is starting to worry me."
There you go. So if there's any
So
other
he,
reason to
so
watch
he
it, go for it.
obviously thought the comparison had some kind of
I was
credence
going to
to
say, and
it.
he was known for killing a couple of people off and then doing a switch with gender right at the end, wasn't he?
Yeah.
The scene that I like most in this movie, that has stuck with me ever since the first time I watch it, is visiting the painter, where he has to climb up through a ladder to get in because the door is like barred or whatever. He's got all those cats. He's a crazy dude trying to sell him a painting for like 200,000 lire or whatever. I don't know how much that is in dollars in 1970 money, but
Probably a decent chunk.
I love that guy. He's my favorite character in this movie.
Because
the
he's
whole,
almost irrelevant. Like,
yeah, the whole idea of like he solves this murder by looking at a painting. He knows it's important. I love that intuition. Like that's just the best aspect of this film for me, is the painting and the painter.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of, it's a genius thing, but also a kind of, this is very convenient in order to solve the plot issues we've got here. And that's kind of the thing with giallo. You love it, and then at the same time you go, there's a lot of absolute BS going on here in order to make the plot work. But it's a very nice and very stylish film. Again, there's a decent amount of blood, and especially for 1970, it's not like heads getting chopped off or anything like that. It's not massively overkill, but you could see how for the time this is pretty much probably on the borderline of what people would be accepting, especially the film critics that are used to kind of
if we remember, like, obviously this is an Italian movie, but if you wanted to release your movies in America, you had to follow the Hays Code up until the 1960s. And so like this is in that era where finally people are making violent films and they're having commercial success. So
yeah.
And then he'll even get more violent in Deep Red.
I was going to say, and the Italians, let's be honest, are not known for holding back. This is the country that obviously back in the day was the Roman Empire. So, like, if there's any nation in the world that is not going to be averse to a little bit of violence every now and then, it's going to be the inheritors of Rome, and it's set in Rome.
Well, and like
as well.
Mussolini is in like living memory for a lot of people too at this point.
Yeah, like fascism has only been gone for a couple of decades at this point. The Romans, literally like a couple of miles from where they were shooting this, they used to shove people in an arena with bears and people and watch them get mauled for the laughs. So like the Italians are not averse to a little bit of blood and gore, but I think even with the 1970, probably in terms of kind of taste for respectable thrillers, this is probably about on the limit. It's probably not masses for now. If you're not very much of a kind of horror or thriller person, you might go, ooh, that's a decent amount. There's a decent amount, but it's not like massively overkill. It's very nice and very stylish, and it kind of sets up what Argento would be capable of in the future. And although he did other stuff, it's the giallo that he's most famous for, and this kind of very much sets the template.
By the way,
it's very much
it's
very much like a state. It's very much like a statement of intent, isn't it? Like this is, this is what I am as a filmmaker, and I'm going to stick to this, and it's announcing himself in a kind of spectacular fashion.
In that painter scene, there's a guy drawn on the wall with piano teeth, which is going to be relevant in Deep Red.
I was going to say, one thing is that Argento also loves, and probably because he grew up in an artistic family, his father was a film producer, his mother was a photographer, but a bit like Stephen King, if in doubt, will have his main character be a writer. Argento, if in doubt, especially in kind of the 70s and going into the 80s, if in doubt, will have his main characters be involved in the arts in some way. In this, he's a writer. In Four Flies on Grey Velvet, he's a drummer. Fernando Rosso, he's a musician, dancer.
It's interesting. Or at least they're doing the investigation, but they don't tend to be actually police or detectives, do they? They're normally amateur. They're normally forced into it, but they come from like another world.
I mean, even Terror at the Opera, set at the opera, and I think she's a soprano in that, the main character as well. So if in doubt, he'll go to the arts for our murder and blood and gore.
It is weird how quickly the writer attaches to the cops. Like, it just starts becoming a part of the investigation instead of sitting around waiting to get his passport back.
Well, I mean, he gets attacked and they've taken his passport. What are you going to do? Like, you keep waiting around, you're probably going to get done. So
I gotta
and he's
solve
probably
this
trying to
murder so I can leave.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, what else are you going to do? Like, I'm getting attacked anyway. I might as well try and stop it because the police aren't doing much, are they? I'm always getting run down in the middle of the street and shot at by somebody wearing yellow.
Do you think it's a commentary on the ineffectual police? You know, that it's never them who are saving the day in these films. It's always ordinary citizens kind of doing their job for them.
I mean, at a certain point, there's always the ineffectual police, unless you're kind of in like 40s, 50s, 60s kind of American kind of like, you know, B movies.
Where the police have to be because the...
Well, if you go for an Andrew Tudor theory of kind of secure versus paranoid horror, which kind of changes around 1960, he argues. Not before that, most of the time, you have an outside influence coming in, and then kind of the authoritative figures will get together and work out a way to dispel it. So they're your scientists, they're your policemen, they're your law enforcement, they're your military people and stuff like that. So a lot of the time it is. You go back further, though, and you look at Sherlock Holmes, and the police force are awful. In fact, there was a GCSE question in the UK from a couple of years ago, and the one for Sherlock Holmes, there's a passage, and it was something along the lines of show how in this passage and elsewhere in the text, the police, Conan Doyle shows the police as something along the lines of bumbling and ineffectual. And that's like nearly 20% of their English literature GCSE. So, and it was The Sign of Fall, which is, I want to say, 1890, somewhere around there. So it's kind of always been a thing. So yes, it's definitely here as well, but it has been present in thrillers and stuff like that beforehand.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get to, I mean, am I going too far to say his best film?
I mean, I think between everyone, it's going to be a toss-up between Rosso and Suspiria.
Yeah. For me, this is best. So Deep Red, Profondo Rosso. So it's 5 years later, 5 years after Birds of Crystal Plumage, and basically it's like take everything you hadn't got in Birds of Crystal Plumage and just whack it up to 11. You know, it's more dynamic, it's more visually striking, it's a lot more violent, it's more depraved in a lot of ways. It's a lot
weirder.
It's weird. It's Argento living his best life,
basically. The
unapologetic about it.
Yeah, the equivalent is like taking Hitchcock's like 30s British stuff, like Young and Innocent and Man Who Knew Too Much and 39 Steps and stuff like that, which are great. And then going, let's take him to the 50s where he does like Vertigo and Rear Window and the remake of Man Who Knew Too Much and North by Northwest, where he goes, we're going to take all that and then in Spinal Tap, dial it up to 11 kind of thing, you know?
Yeah, so we kind of we open with a child apparently witnessing a murder. We don't know who's been killed, but we just know this child saw it. And hang around this lovely house, with, in front of a grand piano, and see on the shadow of the wall of someone stabbing someone else, and this innocent child, seeing it all, and then we randomly cut to a psychic, a German psychic, performing to like a full theatre audience. I'm thinking, where's this going? What do these have to do with each other? And she has a vision, which kind of she has a vision of extreme violence and horror in the immediate future, and she's convinced that someone in this audience is going to do something horrible, and she'll be able to identify them. If she could spot them in the crowd. And then we get the classic. After that scene, by the way, we get very satisfying little curtains, velvet curtains closing in front of this scene. I was like emphasizing like the construction, kind of the artificiality of the whole thing. It's almost like it's a heightened kind of reality. It's not quite our world, but it's kind of as I said, everything's kind of dialed up that bit more. Just to work on these kind of levels of logic.
I will say very quickly, I wonder if
Yeah.
that is almost a slight reference to the 39 Steps, which is also like the key information was
Yeah,
given on the stage, and he's now the Italian
yeah,
Hitchcock.
that wouldn't surprise me at all. Yeah. So we get the classic kind of killer kind of kitting up kind of montage. So the camera kind of roving over like all this weird kind of dolls and kind of trinkets and stuff on table. And then you see see the black leather gloves. See the knives. Um, and kind of obviously just getting ready, for their first murder. Less kind of typically, you also see whoever it is applying like very heavy black eyeliner, which sort of seems to at first tip the hand tip the hat towards the fact that maybe it is a woman, and we're being kind of we've been prepared for that from the start. But then he'll throw us off the scent a few times throughout the film.
And
Um,
also, it should be noted, Argento plays those hands in
Yes,
both of these
this
movies.
was yeah. And he famously didn't trust that job to anyone else. He said, "Look, it's just easier if I do it. If I just do exactly what I want the hands to do in this thing, rather than trying to direct someone else to do it." But yeah, I think this is the most
Save some
film where
money.
he's most prominently playing the hands. Yeah. Um, so after this, you see we have the first murder, which is of the film. So it's this German psychic, we saw a couple of scenes ago, and she's attacked in her apartment by a figure wielding a meat cleaver, and this is witnessed by our hero Marcus from the streets. So he's a musician. He's a British musician in Rome, and he's just met his drunk friend. At a bar that I mean, you're always going to win me over by directly referencing Hopper's Nighthawks. As you can see behind me, it's my one of my favourite paintings. And literally, the bar they're in is that. It's like a live action recreation of that. Of that painting.
Does Carlo work in the Blue Bar?
I don't think so. No, I think he's another musician, isn't he? But he's kind of on hard times. I think he's just getting very drunk, isn't he? He's a bit of a failure at life. We've heard later on he's basically repressing his trauma, isn't he, through substance abuse. Yes. So Max kind of breaks off the meeting, kind of witnesses this this murder happening in the window above, and rushes through into the apartment building. Arrives too late. The culprit's gone, and he's just this body, kind of bloody body, just hanging half out the window.
Also, I love the shots on the street and the sounds of the shoes on the ground in this scene. But there's the one part where it's shot from very far. They're standing on either side of the statue, yelling at each other. Like it's such a good scene.
It's great, yeah. So he hangs around at the apartment, and the police come along. They start, gathering evidence, looking around. At that point, he seems to notice something piercingly missing from a wall. When he first rushed in, he noticed all these paints on the wall. These kind of really creepy paintings of also like disembodied heads or something. They're just. And he's looking at this space on the wall. I was thinking there was another painting there that must be important, but of course, because it's a giallo film, we can't remember why it's important or what exactly it is. So
otherwise, the film will be over in 3 seconds.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, this I do remember. I think Edgar Wright wrote a piece for Empire magazine a few years ago, kind of basically praising this like his favorite Argento film, one of his favorite films overall. And he said basically, it's like you have that scene, and then you get, when you finally get to the end of the final revelation, the final key flashback that gives you all the information. He said he had to stop the film there, rewind it right back to the beginning to double check they hadn't cheated. And I'll admit, I read that article, then saw this film on the back of reading that article. So, this sounds interesting. I did exactly the same thing. I had to go back to like that scene, first in the apartment, thinking, did they cheat? Did they cheat? No, they didn't cheat. There it is. And literally, in the first 10 minutes, you see the killer's face in the apartment, but bold as brass, but you don't know what you're seeing. So they kind of get away with it. It's just such a clever kind of moment of sleight of hand, because basically it turns out, again, spoiler alert, but turns out the killer was still in the room when he rushed in, but she kind of hiding around the corner. And there's a mirror on the wall, and you see her face in the mirror in reflection. It just looks like one of the other paintings, basically. And that reveals that yes, it is a woman doing the killings. She's wearing the trench coat and the gloves and the hat and everything, but everyone's mistaking her for people who've seen her fleetingly, mistaking her for a male killer. and it's it's Carlo's mother. It turns out is very insane mother, who's essentially she was the one who killed Carlo's father. You find out later on that she killed Carlo's father and traumatized him forever. But when he threatened to basically have her committed, so and she's basically cleaning up anyone who kind of can see that connection in the family and kind of ruin their lives, essentially. So she kills the psychic because she's had a vision about what she's about to do. She kills all kinds of people associated with the psychic and associated with the family further back. Again, it is one of those things where it's kind of as kind of Marcus, and he teams up with with a reporter as well, and kind of the lines of inquiry and investigation. You're struggling to see like the leaps in logic sometimes. Sometimes they just go into random places. It's like, oh, this seems to fit, so we'll go here. But I think, but why? How do you make that connection? Now, I still don't entirely understand how they get to the creepy old house. What kind of draws them there?
I just watched it and I can't remember. I think it's like a
No.
drawing or something. Like
it's
very
giallo.
They've seen the image of the house somewhere, haven't they? But how they go from that to we've seen this picture of this creepy house to the killer must have once lived here, or it must be something.
So
that's
what I love about this movie is that it meshes sort of surreal Freudian stuff from like 40s horror with the modern violent stuff. So whenever the lady gets burned, he's calling to say, hey, I'm going to go investigate that author. And he gets burned by steam. And then he talks about, my dad's, when I play the piano, it's like bashing in my father's teeth. And then the other guy gets his teeth bashed in. Like, it's so good.
And I think this is probably some of the best and also some of the nastiest kills in like any Argento filming. The boiling water one especially, that really that just makes me shudder. Because so the one it's quite clever how they basically, because she's a middle-aged lady, committing these kills. So she's quite clever in terms of how she kind of attacks the victims. She's not going to be overpowered because she's just she's prepared. She'll obviously hit them from behind, or I think the only one of the victims she physically overpowers is the other woman. So she drowns her in a bathtub full of boiling water. But any man she attacks, she's kind of she's coming up from behind, or and kind of crippling them earlier on. So
I'm going to say very quickly, anyone that's seen kind of like just images from this but not seen the whole film, I will say you will be very disappointed that the doll is severely limited in its presence, even though it is iconic.
And James Wan says yes, that is why we gave Jigsaw a doll avatar in Saw.
It's exactly what my brain goes to as a 21st century viewer. I was like, Jigsaw or Billy, whichever.
Yeah, it's Billy.
I mean, no kind of horror film I don't think isn't made a few points more creepy by some eerie kind of children singing. I mean, it's not even like singing like a nursery rhyme or something. It's just general. It's just children making noise. It's just
creepy kids. If you pull them off right, will always work.
Yeah. I mean, this was Goblin's first collaboration with Argento, and I think for me, one of I think obviously you got to obviously admire Suspiria, but I think this is probably my favorite of their scores. I think it's really effective. Although it's a really random moment where Marcus kind of pulls up to the creepy old house and he's about to go in, and all of a sudden the soundtrack goes kind of full on jazz. Like you get like this.
Welcome to Giallo.
You get this kind of throbbing kind of bass line, and like a saxophone coming in out of nowhere. It's like, what film am I watching?
I like this jazzier soundtrack more than Suspiria, and I'll get into that later. But
most giallo are not complete without like a proper prog rock soundtrack. Like it will go from like weird stuff to when they're running away to be almost like a 1970s American cop show soundtrack. but they're being
Yeah.
chased by like a knife wielding maniac at the same time, where it's slightly
Yeah.
jarring the first couple of
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
watch one randomly that you haven't seen before. You're like, hey, the music's back.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, like all the deaths are particularly kind of memorable and stylish and horrible in all ways. So yeah, there's Bonewater, one guy having his teeth smashed against various pointy corners of furniture, and obviously how the killer herself is eventually dispatched. With there's another thing I thought of was that is there ever an old-fashioned elevator in a horror film that's not going to be used to kind of give someone a grisly demise? Because she falls against it, gets a necklace caught in it, and then of course it goes down and decapitates.
Sam, the house, by the way, was in a book of folklore describing a haunted house.
Again, why does that link to the investigation? I just don't get that link.
Haunted houses are where murders happened.
Yeah,
Again,
okay.
this brings up the thing of all the giallo just trying to one up each other. And the person who got that from was Luigi Cozzi, who I mentioned to you before the stream. Kind of said that, and kind of half came up with the idea with Argento for a psychic that predicts it when they were making Four Flies on Grey Velvet. I'm going to trust his opinion, considering he was working on the giallo at the time.
Yeah, and there's a scene where inside the creepy house he discovers this kind of child's drawing that's sort of been plastered over, so he kind of chips away at this wall and kind of reveals more of the image, and eventually he managed to reveal that it's a body that's been stabbed, but apparently by a child, and then it thinks right, so murder happened here, and the kid did it, and he rushes off, and then just as he's gone out the room, the rest of the plaster falls away, and it turns out there's another figure there, which obviously was the mother who actually did it.
Another fun like red herring relating to the mascara is we find out Carlo is gay. And his partner is dressed up in mascara. Also has the same hair as Carlo.
Yeah, that's definitely another one, isn't it? Yeah. I mean, I say Argento's relationship with the kind of representation of gay people is interesting. I mean, he's so I watched Count Nine Tails at the beginning of the week, and
I have seen that, I think, many years ago. So I got a feeling I watched it, but I can tell you nothing about it.
There is quite an extended scene in a gay bar in that, and basically, he's never kind of, which wasn't typical for the kind of the 70s. He never denies that gay people are around and living their lives, but a bit like kind of attitudes like kind of transgender people, people who cross dress. It's often they use as like plot devices in horror films and stuff. And I mean, I'm not sure that are any of his killers of the films I can think of gay, or are they just generally like supporting characters, or as Jake says, like red herrings?
Also in this movie, they're like, oh, get all the perverts in a lineup, and one I don't know if they're a cross-dresser or a trans person, but they say, oh, the transvestites don't go with the perverts, and like I feel like that's progressive for 1977. Like just having an awareness of it in a film to me is very different from what was happening in America.
It's something, absolutely, yeah. And if not like ridiculed or anything, it kind of adds color to the story as a whole. It's
just
like,
kind of there.
Yeah, definitely. So apparently these like nasty murder scenes. Apparently, Argento wanted to basically do a film where you could imagine kind of the average audience member could imagine kind of what it felt like to have these kind of things happening to them. So he says, most can't imagine what it was like to kind of be brutally stabbed, but you could relate to you could relate to kind of just being like narrowly getting away, from assault, or everyone's being like stubbed their toe on furniture, or kind of been scalded by hot water, and it's like taking those kind of ideas but kind of much further. So which is kind of quite effective for me. Apparently in Japan, this was released later than Suspiria, so it actually came to Japan like in the 80s at some point, and they titled it Suspiria 2. It's like a marketing ploy, which I suppose is a bit like what they did with Dawn of the Dead, calling it up. sort of calling it zombie, and then obviously zombie flesh is becoming zombie too.
Zombie 2,
So
yeah.
it's it's kind of localization, for different kind of different audiences around the world is kind of interesting. He was originally going to call this kind of on the back of his kind of his animal themed titles. He was going to call it the Saber-Toothed Tiger originally, but again, which would have made it another film which has nothing to do with the animal in the title. But he started to get annoyed at other filmmakers, especially in the giallo genre, kind of copying him and using like the animal gimmick in their titles. So I'm going to have to break with this trend now. It's like
Yeah.
it's old hat now.
Yeah, I will strike back on the Four Flies on Grey Velvet thing, because that
Yeah.
does very briefly come in, because the killer has it's like a fly as a pendant, I think it is.
Okay. Fair enough.
And there's a bit of pseudoscience where it's like they've managed to capture now I'm remembering it, obviously. They've managed to capture the image, the last thing that somebody sees before death is like retained on the
Yeah.
eye, and they see four flies apparently on grey velvet, and it turns out to be like a fly in a pendant kind of thing, swinging back and forth over somebody's clothing, I think it is. And so it almost like it's a blurring 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of as it goes across. So it is there, but it's again Argento kind of finding a random plot device
Yeah.
very late on in the game that's brought in, and then naming the entire film
Yeah.
after it, rather than
Yeah.
something that's more kind of overt.
Yeah. 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 And this is kind of film's kind of like, it's like style to the nth degree, but it's not like style without substance. I think it's really,
Yeah.
really compelling, and just completely kind of grabs you from the start, and you do want to kind of find out exactly kind of what's at the end of this kind of really kind of dark and twisted mystery, and it does all kind of come together towards the end. I think the acting's pretty good, as far as Giallo goes as well. I think I think David Hemmings and Daria Nicolodi, who obviously worked with Argento a few times and married him. They're both a real good kind of
Buried the lead
on
there,
screen.
little Sam.
Yeah, just I think they're a real good kind of on screen kind of partnership, and kind of interesting characters in a way. And Clara Kalami, who plays Carlo's mother, the killer. I think she's the only. I think she's the one who. No, there was something about the dubbing. This was she the one who was? I think she was the only one of the Italian cast. I think who dubs herself into Italian. I think because she didn't. I can't remember what it was now. There's something about the dub press of her, something that made her stand out from the cast. But I can't remember what it was now. But I think she's really effective character, because from the first meeting that she's weird. I mean, she's an eccentric. She's just kind of sitting at home, waiting for her son to return, and being very kind of overly friendly, but also kind of absent-minded as well. And you think, oh, it's just this weird kind of middle-aged woman. But then when the revelation comes, she kind of switches over to some sort of other personality, and she's almost demonic. She's she really plays that well, I think. I mean, there's references to her, to the character. She used to be in movies. She used to be a model. There's all these pictures on the wall of her, like her former career, and I think that's a reference to this actress who's had I think quite a lengthy career in Italian film. So I think she was going at least since the 40s, I think. But yeah, I think it is one of his best overall. I just think it's I think it just bounces off the elements that he's really good at. It's kind of the stylish violence, kind of the compelling story, the kind of twisted edge to it, and it looks and sounds great. What more could you want?
I was going to say, it is also helped by the fact it has one of the best main themes in possibly cinema from Goblin, which then gets reused in a film that came out a couple of years ago called Piercing, adapted from the Rio Murakami novel. You're just watching it, and suddenly out of nowhere comes Deep Red's theme. It's like, oh my god, hello, how are you doing? It's a bit like when you're watching Reanimator, and it's the theme tune is like a mixed up like dubbed version
Yeah.
of Psycho, remix version theme.
By the way, if anyone listening hasn't seen Piercing, give yourself a treat and see Piercing. It's a really unique, kind of interesting little horror.
Well, it would be because I haven't read the book, but I know it's from Ryo Murakami, who also did Audition.
Yes.
And it's like he's got it, and actually hits from the show era as well. I've read that one as well, and he's like anything Ryo Murakami does, it's like, yeah, we're gonna take like 50, 60,000 words, and we're gonna go weird with it, and it's gonna be like black comedy weird.
Yeah. Yeah. Can you believe this film never got a cinema release in the UK? Amazingly, it just.
Well, here's the thing: next year is 50 years, so probably somewhere they will do a re-release.
Definitely, hopefully. Correct that, long after the fact.
Yeah, Edgar Wright, if you're listening, you have power over the BFI.
Yeah. So from this one, where Argento was very much kind of solidified who he was as a filmmaker and made arguably one of his best films. From that to probably his most famous film.
Yeah.
Well,
where he took a lot of drugs and
there's the
the ultimate cocaine movie.
to go back to the painter in Crystal Plumage, he says, "I'm in my mystical period," as he's making a new painting. That's where Argento is here. Like you can see elements of it in Deep Red with the. I would argue the how did we get here? It probably has some sort of like dream logic, surrealistic sort of thing going on. And that's what Suspiria is. Suspiria just becomes heightened reality, weird, even more stylized slasher movie kind of.
Yeah, it's a giallo. Well, it's more like sort of 90 minutes of vibes with some weird giallo stuff thrown in there to give it an excuse.
And so that's my problem with it. It's 90 minutes of vibes. And when I first saw it, I hadn't seen much like this. But now I've seen... I mean, look, you're going to hate me for this. I've seen the remake. And I
haven't seen the remake,
better.
so I can't comment.
When it comes to...
I've seen the remake, and I'm completely the other side of the argument for me. I don't think the remake works at all.
That's fine. Here's my big issue. Again, spoilers. The people are witches at the end. Yeah. And we get about 1 minute of this cramped little shot of them saying, "We need to kill the American girl," and then she stabs the ghost of the Greek lady, and then the movie is over. And
it needs another 10-15 minutes put on the end. I won't deny you that.
And so that's where like it just left a bad taste in my mouth this time around, because the other one like shows so much more. And the witches are cool, and in this movie they are just said to be witches, and I can't really tell that at all.
No, it's a weird one, because again, until you get to about 10 minutes to go, it is really good. Just like it's just Argento having fun with style, and you can see how the visuals and the music alone. And I'm someone who, I know, Sam, you went that Profondo Rosso is a better soundtrack than Suspiria. I fairly often will just put on the Suspiria soundtrack because it's just a mood and a vibe, and the main theme is so good.
What I don't like about the Suspiria soundtrack is it's too dissonant, and it's more grating to me that it is like creating a creepy atmosphere. Like I wish there had been a bit more order to it, because it does fit what's going on. It creates an atmosphere.
There's sometimes where it is off, but I'll argue, especially like going to in the opening scenes with that main theme.
Yeah,
it is beautifully done, and the first 10 minutes are like with that first death scene until kind of the next morning is just, in terms of like mood and vibe and visuals and the music all coming together, and then the shock factor of all the death with all the glass raining down, the colors and that. It's so like outlandish in a way.
What I will say for it is, unlike the other two films we've discussed, which both open really strongly, but kind of keep going and keep delivering kind of many memorable moments like throughout their runtime. one thing I will say about Spirit, I don't think it ever tops that opening scene.
It
No.
It's like,
doesn't.
there's stuff I like throughout the rest of the film, but it's really it's just
Yeah.
that bang open, and then it's kind
Yeah.
of everything in comparison to that is going to be come across poorer for it.
Yeah, I watched it the second or third time yesterday. I can't remember which, and because I essentially went, I remember bits and I remember shots and vibes, but I can't remember the actual plot.
Yeah.
And the trouble is, if Suspiria has a problem, it's the fact that there almost is no plot.
Yeah,
It's just stuff that happens. They eventually go, "Oh, it's witches doing it."
the plot is this place is a little bit weird, and there's weird stuff going on.
Yeah.
What is it? But like the character doesn't really have a reason to care, in my opinion, which really holds me back from loving it. But basically, the character is this American ballet dancer. She comes to West Germany. I don't know if it's at this or near this point, but apparently Argento was fascinated by this point where Switzerland, France, and Germany all meet together. And apparently there was like some occult founding or something that happened there. And so he just became obsessed with the occult and made this movie. She is traveling, from the airport. She can't hail a cab, so that's uncomfortable. It's raining, she's very wet. She finally gets into a cab, drives to the school, and out comes this lady. She's yelling stuff that both we and the character will fail to remember, although it is important to the plot.
There you go. You see,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's important to the ending, I guess, actually. Maybe not the plot.
So if anybody's thinking of writing a giallo,
Just have the main character not pay attention in the opening acts.
yeah, and then you can do whatever the hell you want because they'll remember it by the end, and that will solve all your issues.
Oh, Dory is basically a giallo character, yeah. But so then we start following the person who ran away, and so that's where the cool big murder scene happens. But before that happens, there's the apartment with the fish bird tessellated bedroom wall, which is amazing. It's then topped by the floor to ceiling carpeted walls in the ballet place, and also the hand drawn MC Escher house that leads to the witch lair. There's so many amazing sets. There's the all gold room. There's the yellow room. You also wear gold clothing in the all gold room. In terms of creating fun colors and sets and costumes, this movie's incredible.
I was going to say, yeah, if you want an actual storyline, don't go to Suspiria.
Watch
if you
the
want
remake.
Probably, yeah. Again, I haven't seen it. I can't comment. It's been on the watch list since it came out. Just never got round to it because it's a movie that isn't 30 years old. But if you want a film where kind of just the soundtrack, even if it's just on its own, is great. The sets are beautifully done, just really visual, eye-popping. The lighting is, let's be honest, incredibly influential on so many filmmakers. Just to go, let's just have fun with reds and blues and wacky stuff. Everything, design wise and visual and sound wise, is off the scale in terms of let's just go mad with it and see what happens. It may not fit in with a plot as much. You can literally tune in right at the end and go, oh, it was witches, let's kill them and burn them up. That's all you kind of need to it. Maybe another 15 minutes at the end, and Argento can do longer because this is about 15 to 20 minutes shorter than Deep Red. So it's not like he's somebody that only goes to 90 minutes and never goes longer. If he'd added in that 20 minutes, then go for it. I don't remember. Maybe there was some production behind the scenes stuff of producers and cutting money down or something like that. Maybe there was. Or maybe it was Argento and he could just do what he wanted by this point because he'd had a string of successes.
Except he still had to use ADR.
Still had to use ADR. Yeah. So if you want an actual story, don't bother. If you want the ultimate horror shock vibe, psychedelic weirdness, this is upper echelons. You can't get much better if you tried. It's so good from that perspective.
And so the ballet dancer, she actually gets turned away, like Jesus at the inn or something. And so she has to go stay at somebody's or a hotel or somebody's house or something. And they say, oh, yeah, so we're going to have you stay because your room isn't ready yet. And then her room gets ready. But she's like, no, I'm going to stay at this person's place. But they exert control over her by going and getting her things and making her stay at the ballet place, which, I mean, yeah, that's kind of spooky, I guess, but...
I mean, I'd want to stay at that ballet place purely because of the sets. Like, just like everything. Just, what color are we going to have the walls? Like, dark blue.
Dark blue and carpet.
And then we're going to this corridor. What color are we going to have the walls? Red and white. With just like pre-shining bathroom kind of color scheme. It's amazing.
I mean, the thing there are a fair few horror films set in like ballet academies, aren't there? It seems quite common. I don't know whether it's just because it's so physically punishing, like a commitment,
And
that kind of fits,
like horror films that crushes young women, like...
Yeah.
But yeah, she...
maybe it's all the abuse that goes on.
She goes to her first like ballet class, but on the way to the room, she gets flashed by a mirror, which, like, I don't know, it casts a spell on her or something because she becomes ill. That's how they trap her there. She gets sick, and so they go get her stuff.
Well, it's like hypnosis, isn't it? It's like you do like when you kind of sway a pocket watch back and forth. You do the same thing with like light, I think.
The pocket watch has like a fly in the middle, so you see 4 of them as it dangles.
Look, it's very cool. I love the sequence, but then I'm going, okay, but why? That's where my issue comes up. What is this accomplishing? Why do we need to keep this lady here? I don't know. I'm pretty sure that is fixed in the remake. There's a reason they need this girl, and not just like she's another I don't know why they're killing these people. I don't get it.
I think it's the other
because
extreme.
You need to kill people in an Italian horror slasher movie.
I think it's the other extreme in the remake. I think they over-explain stuff and can get rid of all the ambiguity. Which
That's
is
fair.
It's a way of doing it. But I agree. Go for obviously that on one end to this with no explanation whatsoever. Yeah, maybe there's a happy medium to be found.
Likely, yeah. But like that's where my problem kept popping up is, okay, but why? Just because they don't want to be here? Well, who cares? Are they giving them power? I don't know. But it's really cool to watch like a girl come into her room. The room's all green and she's like, there are witches. And she's asleep. And then later she goes, I vaguely remember being told that they're witches, but I don't know why. And then she like, I don't know if she falls into razor wire or what it is, but that death scene is pretty cool. And that's where the giallo gloves there, because she locks the door and then the knife is trying to like pop up the lock as she escapes.
What bad luck to find the one corridor where they're storing all of their razor wire.
I'm not sure if it's razor wire or just kind of like just loops of general wire.
It just looks like wire.
But
it's like it's so cool. Again, this movie is all about not in terms of the plot. I mean, it's kind of in a weird way similar to my thoughts on this is a completely weird connection, but to Tron Legacy, which I said before, which is ignore the dialogue and the plot and just have the visuals and the soundtrack. And it's phenomenal.
Amazing soundtrack.
The maggot scene, it's so gross. Like it is gross. But why? Did the witches do that, or was it actually just we ordered some whatever and we forgot about it and it's spoiled?
Again, Sam, how much cocaine was Argento on whilst making this movie?
All of it.
I mean, Scorsese was on a lot of cocaine while he made a lot of his movies.
But literally, but this one too, actually shut down the production because his cocaine dealer disappears. I can't manage this, not without my powder.
Oh, and by the way, Wikipedia does say it is razor wire, but it just looks like wires. So
it doesn't do much cutting on her is the thing.
It doesn't.
I do wonder if her falling into there, thinking about James Wan getting Billy for Saw from Fonda Rosso, if the razor wire trap in the original Saw is also from this.
We'll make it actually look like razor wire, though. James
I was
Wan
going to
said.
say, and actually have the actual thing do some cutting and razoring. Maybe not, but it seems like a fairly decent coincidence.
But she does find out, like, okay, yeah, so in Deep Red, they're going place to place. I don't understand at all how she ends up. Oh, I remember. Sarah. It's like Sarah's boyfriend or something is a professor at this at a university where he's a psychiatrist or something like that, and he goes, yes, over there, that's the demonology professor here, he can tell you everything about witches.
Again, giallo with their amazing coincidence timing
And then he sits down to talk about witches, which I enjoyed. It's in front of the BMW building, which is cool. It's very cool looking.
If you want more explanation, you need to go to the other two in this informal trilogy, because they do go a bit more into mythology of that. It doesn't make them better, though, I'd argue.
No. Mother of Tears is not good from what I've heard, and Inferno is not awful, but not astonishing.
Yeah, again,
from what I remember.
A few individual strong images and memorable scene, but kind of a bit all over the place from what I remember.
Well, then here's the answer. The evil Greek immigrant was a witch, and so I don't know. We need to keep immigrants from coming into West Germany and running our ballets. I don't know. There's probably something there that Argento was not thinking about at all because he was on cocaine. Whenever I think witches, I don't think Greek people, but that's probably my issue more so than the films.
I mean, Greek mythology, and there are some witches in there. One thing I will say about this is that when I was watching it again, like the fact the main character is called Susie, I think it is, threw me off because I know it's Jessica Harper, isn't it? Is it Jessica Harper or Jennifer Harper? That's the main. That's the lead. But in my head, I've seen the name so much that's the name of the character rather than the actress. It's a bit like when somebody goes, "Oh, it's this actress in this," rather than the character.
Just like in Phantom of the Paradise, she isn't whatever her character's called in that. She's just Jessica Harper, but she's singing this.
So then they start calling her Susie, and I'm like, wait, I thought the name was actually Jessica, and so I had to look at it. Oh no, that's the actress's name. Okay.
In Deep Red, I called the guy Paul McCartney the whole time.
Fair enough.
He's the guy who replaced him.
And I will say again for the visuals, there are some like the kind of red and blues of her in the back of the cab going to the place, and then the one shot of her as kind of the witch is revealed, kind of with the knife, and she's kind of holding it in the corner again with the red and blues. Just though that color work is so iconic, and it is rare for a film to be kind of more known for the lighting than anything else. That is testament to Argento, and
which
I
is
think
odd. We should think of lighting when we think of films.
We should probably quickly try and find out who the actual cinematographer was for this, because it sounds like they need a shout out. Cinematography by Luciano Tovoli, who did Suspiria. Oh, he also did Titus in '99. That was one. My first university exam was on that. He's done a lot of stuff, but I think realistically, this is what he's going to be known for forever.
Dude has done a lot of stuff.
And again, he did. Dracula 3D.
He did Dracula 3D.
But again, when your film is kind of more known for like the set design and especially the lighting, and again we said like the lighting alone is what when somebody thinks of Suspiria, you think of the lighting and the red and the blues. That's what comes to mind.
Yeah, I think of that first, and the Goblin soundtrack second, I think.
Yeah. And theme tune second. It's not the great plot wise, but in terms of its visuals and its soundtrack, that it is top tier. Just film.
Goblin have quite an interest, and their various iterations have their quite a good body of work considering how little time they've actually spent kind of getting on over the years. They've
Yeah.
broken up about 15 times, and like it's like a revolving door
Yeah.
of members basically. It's just been the main guy, the keyboardist who's stayed, and the others just
Claudio something, isn't
come
it?
and
Yeah.
go. Yeah,
Goblin is now essentially his kind of tribute band, you know.
Yeah.
And I will say, if anyone happens to be kind of in one of the major cities, aka like LA side or New York side, in the US, Goblin are touring in the next few weeks, which would be great to see. But yeah.
By the way, for that cinematographer, he did 2 Antonioni films. So he did The Passenger and Chung Kuo Sinha. So
well, here's the thing about kind of Italian kind of filmmaking, and is that they will do pretty much anything. They're not kind of genre or highbrow thing, which is why Morricone will score the big ones and also score like little weird films.
Crystal Plumage.
He did Crystal Plumage. He also did part of the score for The Thing, which then Quentin Tarantino reused for The Hateful Eight. So like.
Yeah.
You know, and the cinematographers will do the highbrow stuff. They'll do the stuff for minimal pay. They're kind of like, I wonder if this is why Donald Pleasance ended up doing a load of Italian films, because he was exactly the same. It's kind of, will somebody pay me for the work? Yes, I'll do it. Hence he appears in stuff like the Paganini horror for no reason. It's not a great movie.
Yeah. Christopher Lee as well. Just some people just like to keep working, didn't they? And and even if they were being kind of typecast playing the same roles kind of in their kind of home film industry, then they say, oh, well, I'll do the same thing again, but just a bit different if I go over and do it in another country.
Might as well.
So, I mean, for me, I love the sets. I love the lighting. That is pretty much all I will remember this movie for. Except this time around, I'm going to remember, oh yeah, there's no story. And it's really unengaging. Like, it's a series of short films, and I mean, I definitely appreciate it. It has.
Do you think Suspiria would be better served just being projected like on the wall of an art gallery?
Yes, it reminds me a lot of Blood and Black Lace, but with less plot. So like, I'd rather just watch Blood and Black Lace because it has that striking visual element too. So
yeah, it's Blood and Black Lace, but there's more blue and red, like lighting weird stuff out of nowhere, and less plot. So you gain some, you lose some, and you know what? We're always complaining that directors don't go out and do something experimental. This was his experimental thing, and looks bloody gorgeous. And if the plot has to suffer for that, we can say that he's tried something and it hasn't been an utter failure, unlike some films that have come out recently.
Well, I was surprised how many mixed reviews this film had when it came out. And you mentioned the, was it Ebert or was it Siskel?
It's Siskel, I think it was. Yeah.
Yeah. Like maybe he did change it, but you know, whenever Wikipedia describes the film's popularity, it's as a cult film. Like the critics at the time were like, I mean, Deep Red was better, and I agree. Deep Red is better. It's able to bring together the lighting and the weird stuff, but also have a story that I can follow and be engaged by. So,
otherwise known as have a story.
Yeah, and again, I'm the one of us that is more apologetic for weird stuff that is mainly style. This movie disappointed me this time around because of its reputation. Like I love Gaspar Noé movies. That might say bad things about me as a person, but I would rather watch Gaspar Noé's weird, like visual experiments than Suspiria, to be honest. Like Climax.
Yeah. Oh, Climax is amazing. Yeah. We should definitely do a Gaspar Noé episode at some point.
Yeah, I probably, but
I'm not going to rewatch Irreversible.
Yeah, the fact we can't do Irreversible kind of it turns me off of it. But
I will say though, if anyone hasn't seen Suspiria and is slightly off, but watch the first 10 minutes, that first death scene, because I think even if you don't like it, as much, Jacob. Even you'll agree that the opening 10 minutes, that opening death scene is just like.
It's incredible.
I think a lot of people have said that it's hard to make something so horrific actually beautiful, and it is. It's stylized and it is beautiful. If everything else falls down, you get those 10 minutes and you go, it's so iconic and so beautifully done and crafted that everything else it's kind of almost irrelevant at that point. Like, we've got what we came for, you know.
The exterior of the ballet academy is so cool. Like, it's a real building that they rebuilt for a set, but like, it's so cool. Every bit of the set design is top tier. And I asked y'all yesterday, like, are there any modern movies that have interesting set design? And I can't think of anything like Suspiria that's been made in the last 20 years.
That's gone so like ridiculously out there.
I mean, I do think like the staircase in Crimson Peak. You know, obviously Del Toro, big Argento fan. You know, there's stuff like that, like individual kind of instances. But yeah, it's not many directors who do like that for like a whole film, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are moments in some films, but not carried out to this extent. Even things like, again, The Substance. Which, I mean, the bathroom is obviously based after The Shining. I think even the corridor leaning to the set in that is kind of Shining-y based. And I said The Shining is it's not modern, but like post Suspiria, a kind of striking visual sets in terms of the color and the design and the patterning and everything like that. And I think I said something like Inception. You get bits of it, but a lot of the time it then goes, but we're going to have a couple of really boring streets that are just streets, because they try and ground it in something. Suspiria is not meant to be grounded. If Megalopolis has a fable after it, I think this should almost have like Suspiria, a fable kind of thing.
Don't dance.
And I'll watch this over Megalopolis any day of the week.
That as well, yeah. I don't want to talk about Megalopolis. I had just come up with a modern movie with good sets, but I lost it. Well, I lost it, so.
It obviously wasn't that good.
The end of Babylon, when they take Tobey Maguire to hell.
I cannot remember the end of Babylon, and we did a podcast on it.
How can you not remember the end of Babylon? There are alligators in a sex dungeon.
Tobey Maguire.
No,
he was there.
The end of Babylon is a 5-minute montage of random bits of film going, isn't film amazing? And you go, you've just shown the decadence of Hollywood killing off a load of people.
It's all worth it.
Apparently, according to Chazelle. That's besides the point. Anyway, we've got any more thoughts? In the nicest way. These are the good ones. I will give a shout out for like Terror at the Opera, which is kind of second tier. It's not amazing, but it's still good fun.
I'd say most of the stuff in his 80s, in the 80s, is still decent. You know, it's still recognizably him, and still something about it, even if they don't always work kind of all the way through. But
and then past then, it's kind of
1990 is the cut-off point, I'd say.
I mean, I do like have normally a hatred for people that like take either bands or directors and kind of praise them as genius because purely some of their old stuff, and go, look, some of the new stuff is also good. Recognize that as well. In the nicest way to Argento, he kind of doesn't have that really in terms of his feature films. Maybe he's done some like a Masters of Horror episode or whatever that like John Carpenter did. It's amazing or something like that. I haven't really seen it, and when you think of Argento, kind of realistically, Suspiria in terms of the great ones is about the end of it, and then in terms of the good ones, sort of Terror at the Opera and that kind of stuff is coming to an end. I will do a shout out for Tenebrae, especially again with the soundtrack for Tenebrae, which is really good fun as well.
I've got that to watch soon. Looking forward to get stuck into that one.
He's Italian Francis Ford Coppola.
Because isn't Tenebrae considered like his last true giallo? You know, he sort of left the genre after that.
I mean, I think probably you could argue that I mean, there's still remains of it in Phenomena and obviously Terror
Yeah,
at the Opera that still has like the
yeah.
black gloves
Wait,
Yeah.
is
and stuff
giallo
like that.
not giallo?
I was gonna say, yeah, I have yet to see Giallo. Apparently, it's not good.
It it
Um,
it's described as a horror giallo film, so
yeah.
Okay.
Apparently, the whole point is that the killer is wearing yellow. Woohoo! Because Giallo, because yellow, because fun. And Mark Kermode did a thing on it, and he goes, "It's so bad." Aside from like that joke,
I bet
so
Adrian Brody's decent.
I mean, sometimes
Usually,
Adrian Brody's
usually,
great, and sometimes he's absolutely atrocious. So I won't pass judgment on that. Yeah, go watch Argento's older stuff.
Yeah.
Because like for what he was doing for the Giallo, like he is the top. You know, there are others that will get close, like
I
Bava
thought
and
and what he did for the horror genre in general, I think just so
yeah,
many people cite him as an influence as one of their favorites, and you can see why. He's just so visually distinct and creative and twisted.
yeah. He'll take stuff and again will somehow make it beautiful in a way, but will also just go sod it right in your face.
Yeah,
But will create something really visually dynamic as well, especially in the 70s
yeah,
when he was just running on full power and then
yeah.
started to wind down over the years. But you know what? He left
Mm.
us like a good 9, 10, 11 at least solidly good, if not amazing films as well. So
Yeah.
you can't really, if he's put out a few stinkers in his lifetime to keep himself going in the money, like, can you blame him?
Well, he makes me appreciate Martin Scorsese, that he's still going and making good movies.
I was going to say, as much as I say, like, I don't really care for Scorsese, like, I don't, like, think his movies are bad. And the fact that he's still coming out with genuinely good movies, even if I don't care for them, is actually astonishing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Not a lot of him and Spielberg, I guess, are the only '70s guys that are doing that in American
Yeah.
cinema.
I was going to say Ridley Scott is still
Ridley Scott.
Ridley Scott.
He's still working, but he's very hit and miss quality wise.
He's still hit or miss.
I mean, the thing with Ridley Scott is the movies might not be great, but at least like visually, he's always on point.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
he's doing his job, and at least in terms of like the
it comes from advertising. You know, all
Yeah.
people go from advertising to directing. Things always look fantastic.
And he has the greatest, like, most blunt quotes in the world. He's so great.
Yeah.
If you're on mic in front of him. Anyway, yeah,
Yes.
all the stuff is great and great for a Halloween watch. If you don't want the monsters and ghouls and you want a good, proper, like, knife in the dark kind of thing,
Yeah.
Switchblade normally.
If you're someone who watched Terrifier 3 recently, it's very toned down violence as well. So,
Some might say subtle.
yeah, by comparison, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that
Even if Suspiria does have like a heart being punctured,
it's true.
this is the 70s, so they had to try and find a way to do that. You know,
it's cut around.
yeah.
That is one thing that struck me, is like I knew these were going to be more violent than like a 60s movie, and then the level of violence is pretty high, but the amount of editing it takes to achieve that is also pretty high.
Well, I mean, there were kind of studies back in the day because everyone was complaining that horror movies had so much violence in, and this is in the slasher craze, and they did kind of studies on it and went like the amount of times like per kill there's any kind of violence, like blood and gore on screen, is like 2 or 3 seconds at a time on average. So it's literally like a flash and it's gone, because they're then going, it's not like just lashings of gore absolutely everywhere. Like the total amount of time for violence on screen for like slashes and then kind of giallo, I guess, as well, on screen is like 15, 20 seconds throughout the entire film max.
Don't watch Grotesque.
Yeah, no. Yeah. Anyway, we should wrap this up because we wrapped up about 20 minutes ago.
We did. We're doing the substance ending. But yeah. We do this every week, so we'll be back with another horror thing next week, because it's October and that's what we do. But until then, guys, where can people find you?
You can find me at SSP Thinks Film and at the Film Magazine, where I've just published my Where to Start with Boris Karloff. He's my favourite horror icon. It was a real pleasure to pick 3 of my favourites and just wax lyrical about them for a bit. So yeah, check that out. I think between us, Kieran, me, you, and Katie, I think we've covered all of the horror icons now.
So I've done Lugosi. You did Karloff. What did Katie do again?
Katie did Christopher Lee.
Okay, yeah. I think I did Vincent Price as well at one point.
You did, yes. Yeah. We've got
So
the big ones.
we're going to get Peter Cushing out of the way soon. But anyway, hopefully you don't find me anywhere, but I'm K-Judgmental across the webs if you do. I haven't done anything in the past week, but I have, a couple of hours ago, got back from finally getting around to see Salem's Lot. So my review of that will be up in the next few days for some vampire spookiness.
Nice. And you can find me at Jacob Film Guy. I have past horror stuff you can go read, but I'm going to recommend... this isn't horror, but Joe reviewed The Wild Robot, which I've read is really good. And also I've read...
Emotionally destroyed him, apparently. So I'll try and catch it next week, hopefully.
I've also read that teenagers are buying tickets to it to go see Terrifier because they're not old enough. Margaret, she wrote in 2022 10 sexiest vampire movies, or movie vampires, sorry, which I know is a popular article on the Film Magazine. And
just a quick spoiler, she will not be adding Barlow from this version of Salem's Lot to that list.
Darn. And if it had TV, that would just open it up so much more. But and then we also have a new article from Martha, the 10 best Jaws moments of the movie, not like Terrifier eating people's faces.
And that's the shark, not the Bond villain.
Yeah, our resident shark experts has, of course, written.
And the animal, not the gambling thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and shark is not a. We're talking about again the animal, not a brand of motorcycle helmet.
We should do a whole clarifying episode.
Right, let's get the hell out of it.
Yes. Also, Joe reviewed Joker Folie à Deux if you refuse to watch that movie, like many of us.
Yeah.
So that is it. Thank you for listening. Go to our go to our Redbubble store. Down in the description, you can give us money. Also at the PayPal, like, comment, subscribe, leave a 5-star review. I don't know, whatever else you're supposed to say. Do we have anything else?
Drink J&B.
They didn't pay me to say that, but I will. Okay, goodbye.
See ya.